Okay, so 480E is pretty much ready to go into the truck now, minus the torque converter. I put one of these TransGO shift kits in it. Just a regular reprogramming kit, nothing fancy. Just to kind of get it to grab a little stronger and shift a little firmer. I didn't do a video on this TransGO kit. There's quite a few guys that have already done videos on these, so I actually have to follow their videos to kind of understand how to do this because the directions are kind of vague in some places. So I'll let you guys look that up if you want to do a TransGO kit yourself. All right, so onto the converter. I bought a Circle D converter. This is a stall converter, like a 25 to 2700 stall. This is a super nice package. It's like one of the nicest converters I've ever seen. I've usually just bought like the Jegs converter or something like that. This one comes packaged really well. It comes with this cool t-shirt. Looks like this. Super nice. It's all packed in like double foam. Comes with a, I don't know, like a Christmas card or something. And comes with a torque converter bolts that actually bolt your torque converter to the flex plate. Again, more foam packaging here. Like, they really do a nice job with these things so that they don't get damaged in shipping. You get a super nice product. Oh, it's heavy and awkward. Ugh. But how crazy is that to see a box that's for a torque converter packaged that well? So the only downside of the Circle Ds is they're kind of like Jack in a Box. They don't make it till you order it. And so you got a few weeks of lead time after you order the converter before it'll actually show up on your porch. So if any of you guys are looking at doing this yourself, make sure you leave yourself enough time to order a converter and have them build it before you can ship it to you. I did not get the billet or anything. This is just a regular budget 480E street stall converter. So super cool. They put a build date on it, put their phone number on it. They write your name on there. Super cool product. I'm just gonna pre-fill the converter with some Deck 6. So I actually just buy this stuff off of Amazon. They have like the best price on it that I can find. Well, I thought maybe I could show you guys the label, but I guess not. But so they have the best price on the stuff that I can find, and it just shows up on your porch the next day after you buy it, versus going to the local auto parts store and paying a bunch of money for some Deck 6. Alright, so I got like a quart of trans fluid stuffed into this converter here. Circle D recommends like a half quart or something to put in there. Either one's probably fine. This transmission looks like it was leaking around this pump seal or torque converter seal here. So I just went over to O'Reilly's and got another one of those. It was like $7. Hopefully that slows down this leak that was going on in here and quits dripping stuff down here and collecting greasy oil. So cool part, these converters, I think that's heavy. They come kind of like pre-greased, pre-lubed on the input shaft here, or whatever you want to call that. All right, I clicked in about 3 times, so we'll call that good and get this thing off the bench. So here got the transmission off the bench and got it bolted up to the back of the motor. The 480E actually came with a factory flex plate, so that saved me some time and special spacers and stuff. I got that bolted to the back of the motor. And since I bought the transmission separate from the engine, I didn't have the bolts and the hardware to bolt it all together. So once again, ICT Billet, just Bellhousing bolts that helped me bolt this thing up with some new hardware there. That was pretty cool. I went ahead and also installed the harness, the wiring harness for the Holley Terminator X. I went ahead and plugged this into the motor before I put the engine into the frame rails. And that seemed to save me quite a bit of headache. It made it a lot easier to plug the harness in. I went ahead and put a plug at the tail shaft here. You kind of see that red thing sticking out the back of the tail shaft. That just keeps the transmission fluid from leaking out all over the floor, just as it would if you had an actual drive shaft in there. I left the starter off the motor since I had plenty of access to get to it from the bottom of the truck with that Crown Vic front end of there. I used some motor mounts from Outcast Autoworks, which were awesome. They let me set this motor just right in the frame rails, or right on that Crown Vic cross member, lined up perfectly, and we're ready to go. So I've kind of lost my train of thought for where I'm going with this truck and the video series and what I want to do next and how to do a video on a specific subject. I'm just kind of muddling through getting this engine put back in here and trying to make sure everything is finalized and working. You can see the wiring is a total mess right now as I try to sort through things. So just kind of walk through where I'm at on this truck right now. So as I sort through the wiring here, I've got a few sensors that I didn't realize I was missing. Let's see if I can do this without making the camera too shaky here. So this engine, when I got it, of course it was just a junkyard motor when we talked about it. It came out of a guy's garage, not technically a junkyard, but I was missing the coolant temp sensor, so I just bought a coolant temp sensor. It's just a GM OEM replacement I bought off Amazon, so that plugged into the Holley system just fine. I didn't realize that I was going to need a manifold air temperature sensor, so this was kind of a cool deal. I found just a GM OEM replacement AC Delco manifold air temperature sensor, and then ICT Billet makes a nice aluminum bung that actually lets you just weld in to this turbo pressure pipe I have here, and then welded that bung in there. Lets me put the temp sensor in there real nicely and gives it a nice clean installation. I'm trying to sort out the cooling system. That's why this hose is laying up here with an adapter in the center of it. Of course, it has to go from the F100 radiator output, which down there on the bottom, it's like a big 1.75" or 2-inch hose that connects to that part of the radiator. And then where it connects to the actual engine is like 1.5" or 1.25". So I had to buy an adapter for that hose. Maybe I'll do a video and kind of how I'm planning on connecting the whole cooling system together with the steam port and everything. The map sensor, of course the LS1 map sensor, I think only goes to 1 bar or something. So I bought a 3-bar map sensor out of like a LS3 or something. It is actually not compatible with this LS1 harness, so I had to go find a adapter harness, which a lot of guys on the Amazon reviews said they've used with this Holley swap to make that more functional and actually work. The alternator, to run the alternator as part of a swap, essentially, you have to have some way to excite the armature in the alternator. So it's just a 12-volt switch source. It looks like they've actually put a resistor or a diode in line here. Again, Holley sells this. It's just a direct 1-wire plug-in. So you just run this yellow wire they give you to a switch 12-volt power source, so that when your key comes on, it provides 12 volts to this wire, which excites the armature and the alternator, and then it runs just fine. It's supposed to charge your battery. I'm still trying to figure out how to get a like 6-gauge or 8-gauge cable wire, 12-volt positive wire from the back of the alternator, and run that out and around or around the back over to the starter or to the battery somewhere. It'll actually charge the system when the engine runs. Trying to get the Holley terminator system plugged in. I've got this whole mess of wiring coming out of the cab, and then it just kind of has the fan signal wires, and it has the fuel pump signal wire in it. A constant power source for the ECU, and then a switch power source for the 480E down there. The fuel pump main power comes up here with this, so trying to get it all routed. I've got a couple relays stuck up here temporarily. I bought this Busman box to stack in 5 micro relays and then 10 fuses. I bought it because it's a bus box, so it has a bus on each side of it, but I'm not sure that I want to use this box because it's kind of causing me to have a separate relay, because the fuel pump runs off of a 12-volt positive switch signal from the Holley. The fans run off of a negative signal or negative switched wire from the Holley. So with that bust bar, that doesn't really function that well. Some more cooling system fun. Again, the top of this radiator has a much larger output than what the engine has, so I bought a silicone adapter hose to make a 90 here. I'll probably have to cut this down and make it shorter to sit closer to the radiator. and then an adapter to actually reduce the size, or reducer. And the cool part about this, again, ICT Billet makes some cool parts for these things. It's got a threaded hole in it here, so that I can put a hose barb and actually let the steam vents, or connect that steam vent, steam port tube that's on the LS1 and most of the other LS motors. The fan I've got wired up. I had to put a connector on the fan wire so I can run it over to the main power box, which again, I'm probably gonna have to switch out some of this wiring. It just seems like things aren't quite functioning for me. So here's the inside of the truck and how things are going here. So I'm gonna actually mount the ECU up inside the top of the glove box here. And so that way it'll be tucked inside the vehicle, kind of out of the way of the elements and stuff underneath the hood. They say you can mount it under the hood, have no problem. Obviously GM mounted millions of ECUs under millions of vehicle hoods, and they're still on the road today. So I just thought it'd be cool to have it inside. It does have these indicator lights on it, like the malfunction indicator stuff. So that'd be awesome just to be able to pop the glove box open, actually see what it's saying in there. So I ran most of the wiring for this down to the firewall. There's kind of a big bulkhead of wires that goes through down here. This big bulkhead of wires, most of this comes from the Holley ECU and just runs behind the dash and then goes out through a hole and goes out to the 4L80E and to the engine controls and the switch box I was showing you guys a second ago. So this is from the wideband sensor and the old tack that was in there hanging down. I got to clip out the stuff that I'm not going to use anymore. I was going to put an additional wideband in the truck and keep that just so I could more easily watch what the O2 levels are doing. And if it starts going lean or something, I'd have an instant indicator of what's happening. So that said, we'll kind of start some of this cleanup stuff. And I'll show you guys what my plans are and kind of walk through what I'm doing to solve some of these issues and stuff that I'm working through here with this swap. So one of my challenges for today is to actually put a couple of bungs for the O2 sensors to sit in this downpipe here so that the Holley system can get a reading from its O2, and then the wideband sensor I'm going to run can get a reading from the same tube here. So what I want to do is just put my two O2 sensors, in theory, just kind of side by side here, and they're out of the way. They're pointed down like they're supposed to be. They're not going to be real pretty sitting here, but I want them close to the turbo, as close to some sort of exhaust cylinder gas outlet as possible, so they take a more accurate reading. I don't want to put them way out in the back, but I don't really want them all the way up front here either, where they're sticking up. So the Holley kit comes with a bung. I've got an extra bung from Summit. These are just weld-in steel bungs, nothing too fancy here. These are like $5 a piece at Summit. So I just bought an extra one. Like I said, the Holley kit had one in it. So I'm gonna pull this downpipe off in a few minutes. I'm just gonna weld in one additional bung. So this is my theory on how I'm gonna make the power steering pump connect to the Ford Crown Vic rack. So keep in mind, this is a pump out of a 98, 99 F-body car. So somehow I got to connect the pressure side of this pump to actually run into the pressure side of this power steering rack. I bought an adapter piece to actually tie an AN fitting onto, we can't see this. So I bought an adapter piece to actually put an AN fitting here on the Crown Vic rack. When I took this rack out of the junkyard, I just cut the power steering lines, and so I still have both the feed line and the return line. I guess you'd call that the high pressure line and the low pressure side. So what I'm going to do here is kind of mark these lines and then take them to a hydraulic shop here in town and see if I can't have the guy just put them back together. So I kind of show you what I'm thinking about doing. So there's a bunch of lines going on here, making a big mess. Make sure I get this out of the way. And I turn my light off on myself. Wow, what are the chances I'd actually hit the power button on the light with the hose? Okay, so this is the pressure line that came off the F-body car, so I'm sure you could just buy this line off of Rock Auto. as the pressure side of like a 98, 99 Trans Am. So what I'm going to do is this obviously won't just screw directly into the Crown Vic rack. So I'm going to take the Crown Vic pressure line here, which comes out and kind of makes a U-bend. And then the Crown Vic has got all this extra stuff on it where it went through like a pressure switch here. And I'm not sure what the pressure switch is for. I'm guessing it was something to tell the ECU, hey, step up the idle control because we're taking max load on the power steering system. And then it goes through here out to another metal fitting, which then goes to another flex fitting and all kinds of just crazy stuff. So what I want to do is have the guy cut all this off, and then I've kind of marked with some tape where I want to say, please cut the hose here, keep this side, trash this side. So I'm going to trash all this extra stuff, this whole metal U, the pressure switch, all the extra junk. And my goal here is to take and mate these two flex lines, kind of like this. If you shovel this in here, and see if he can't put those together and clock those correctly for me to where, you know, you could take some sort of a union like this and just cut these two lines and put them together. They are two different diameter lines, it looks like. So, you know, I'm hoping he'll have something that he can sandwich those together with. If not, we'll go on to plan B. Just trying to help you guys out at home. If this works, this would be a pretty simple, pretty cost-effective thing to do, I think, with like Rock Auto parts, where you could order an F-body hose off of Rock Auto, and you could order a pressure hose for a Crown Vic off of Rock Auto as well. Kind of put them where you want them, take them to a hydraulic shop and have them merge them together. Okay, I'll pull these off of here real quick, and then I'll just throw these in the truck and take them with me tomorrow and drop these off at the hydraulic shop. I'll see what the guy says. So here it is one last time before I take it in. So this is the high pressure side off the Crown Vic, and this is all the extra junk that I'm planning to cut off of here. Again with the cut keep mark, and then here's the F-body hose that I want to put right here, and again I put like a little tick mark on here to clock these hoses. So hopefully the guy can put these together for me and just merge these into one Ford to Chevy pump hose here. Anyway, what's that item? Well, looks like my plan worked. I got a Ford to GM hose now. So what the guy at the hydraulic shop did was he just cut those two hoses where I wanted them and put a male-female fitting on there. He said he didn't have a way to actually union the hoses back together, which there's no problem at all. It seems like it's going to work just fine. So there's a just two unions. So here's the original F-body hose, and then here's that Crown Vic front steering hose, and you can see where it's cut off right before it went into that hard metal line, which made a 90 and a 90 and went after that sensor and stuff. Anyway, looks like this should fit on the truck just fine. And the coolest part was to have all that done, he only charged me $13.23 to put that line together. So simply a good solution here, and cheap, easy replacement. It didn't take him 5 minutes to make the line or to put those two couplings on that line and give it back to me. So if it were to leak in the future, if I have to replace it or something, it should be no big deal. So looks like this hose should work out really well for me. It actually comes out of the Crown Vic power steering line here. We can get a shot of it. And then it comes around where it was the factory Crown Vic hose, goes back up, and then S's back into this swivel connection. My camera will focus on that. And it goes back through that swivel connection and then goes on up to the power steering pump. Everything has good clearance, out of the way. The hose is maybe an inch longer than I'd like for it to be, but looks like it's out of the way and not going to touch anything hot, so I think it'll be just fine. So that's where I'm at with my struggles, issues, challenges, that sort of stuff. Anyway, next video, hopefully I'll have all these issues sorted out and we can get this truck actually fired up. We can see how it runs. We can see what other issues we kind of run into here. Things go really well. We'll actually get this truck out on the road for its first test drive and really see some excitement. All right, until then.